Hi everyone, good morning. Thank you so much for filling in the feedback last week. It's really useful for me as a presenter to get feedback. Um, so now let me get this slideshow up and running first. Now, there we go. Okay, so everybody's very welcome. Let me hide everybody there so I can see what I'm doing. Right. So today we are going to continue on from last week. We're going to do the connected play and development for the 3 to 5 year olds. And for anybody that was on last week, you will see that there is a lot of connection, obviously, between 0 to 3 and 3 to 5. And that's really, due to the spiral development element of child development, where, as children grow, we we offer similar types of experiences at different rates of difficulty, and if they have a good foundation, they're usually able to upskill in those areas. So you will see things that tie in. Okay, so quickly, just the overview. So I'm going to talk about the connection between connected play and development, which again we did for the not threes last week. The impact of growth and development on the complexities of behavior. So we can't do child development unless we talk about behavior. We're going to Throughout the whole presentation, there will be the spiral concept to learning. We'll be talking about particular activities and, just specific activities that aid the spiral and strengths-based learning for children 0 to 5. Preschool, we're kind of thinking on starting school and preschool and equipping children with the skills that they need to be able to begin school. So we want to look at the sensory system as well, which is hugely important and establishing kind of readiness for many life milestones. And throughout, I want to talk a little bit about executive functions and their part in development. So just a quick reminder for anybody that wasn't here last week. Um, about the connection of the brain and the body. So first of all, valuable play activities incorporate whole body and whole brain learning, because this is where the child becomes more automatic in their abilities and their learning becomes fun and enjoyable and easy to internalize. So there's that word again, fun and enjoyable and fluent. Fluent is so important. Once a child is fluent in their body and brain, they will be able to internalize and upskill so much quicker. So, knowing that play has strong foundations in growth and development for all children right from day one is knowledge that we, as parents and practitioners, need to both be aware of and continue to put into practice throughout childhood. So, it's really just encouraging parents' awareness of the massive part that play has in child development. Play is not just play, play is development in itself. And the more play we get in the early years, the more connected our development is. And when our development is connected, our learning of skill sets is so much more easy and fluent. So the brief benefits of play, there's so many benefits, but the main benefits are, it improves all our overall outcomes, which we all try to do as home visitors. We want children's overall outcomes to be enhanced and to increase. We have had a decline in empathy and resilience in recent years, and this definitely is linked to, there is definitely a COVID link there as well, but it's also very much linked to the changes in the quality of play that our children experience. Unfortunately, we have less outdoor active play and we've much more sedentary screen play. So it's really important that we go back to the basics of play. Years ago, maybe if we look back ourselves, there was an awful lot of more movement incorporated in our play and not so much these days. We do have a lot of scheduled movement play, so we maybe have football, we have gymnastics, but our boredom play is much more sedentary than incorporating free movement, and free movement is so important. So the movement will give children a strong foundation to build upon, and play gives children a strong foundation to build upon. So how do we understand what children are gaining through the play experiences that they have every day? And as we spoke about last week, I keep going to say last year, is the observation skills. Observation skills for parents are huge. So, we don't, as home visitors, it's not up to us to provide all the play activities, but it's up to us to impart the information on the importance of play to parents and really, highlight the importance of their observation skills and what do they see in children's play. So our observation skills, carefully observe their play to identify their strengths and challenges. What are they doing? What is it they're actually doing? How are they doing it? Why are they doing it? Is there balance in their play? How is their chosen play affecting our children? Is it very sedentary? Does it have an effect? Does it have an effect on their capacity to learn? What can I do to help? And do I need to help? You will hear of helicopter parenting, involved parenting, assertive parenting, all these different types of parenting styles. And, nowadays we tend to do a lot of stepping in there and showing children what to do. So it's really important that we also learn how to step back and just work out, do we actually need to help? So movement. Children, there's kind of an expectation when they start school that they need to sit still, they need to concentrate. So unfortunately, children really aren't at the age that they are able to sit still and concentrate when they go to school. So the best that we can do is to try and ensure that they expend their. Sorry, there's some input coming through there. If maybe everybody just wants to go on mute. So when they start school, there is that expectation. So it's important that parents understand that they can expend their energy through movement. So movement is not only important for concentration and regulation, but movement and fluency of movement is vital for all types of learning. I'm going to try and maybe.
And if there's anyone else on this, okay, thank you. Bye.
Hi, could everybody just make sure they're on mute? That was just it was just coming over there. It was hard to hear. Okay, so the very basics of movement will give children fluency of body, and as we spoke about last week, fluency of body is equal to fluency of mind. When we have this, we have children who are much more readily available to be able to learn, to be able to upgrade, to be able to move on in their skill sets. So movement plays a huge part. I spoke more about movement last week and we went into it. So if you weren't here last week, have a look through the movement slides from last week. So coordination. Coordination is a hugely important skill to be able to learn. It has our roots in balance, it has our roots in focus and concentration, and it's really important that children learn coordination. It's really important that children can use both sides of their bodies in a coordinated way, particularly before they start school. So it's really important that they can cross the right side of their body over to the left and vice versa. And that's simply what, early stage 3 to 5 coordination is about. It's where there's fluency on both sides of the brain and fluency on both sides of the body. So the importance of crossing the midline. So if I cross my right hand over to my left side of the body, I have crossed the middle line that goes down from the center of the head right down the core of the body. So that is called the crossing of the midline. So being able to do a variety of movements with the two sides of the body will help children establish dominance. Dominance is simply where one side of the body takes charge and the other side plays a supporting role. Neither side is more important than the other. We often think that the dominant side is more important. If the supporting role side is continuously involved in coordination and movement, we will have better coordination and movement. So dominance is simply where our children become kind of left-handed or right-handed as such at that age. Now, dominance can be fluid up to 8 or after, depending on stage development. And it is important that your child decides. So if you cast your mind back to last week when I was on about presenting items and objects and toys to children in the middle, this is something that should continue, because the brain needs to tell the body what side they want to reach for toys and items. So the more fluent movement your child experiences, the more likely dominance will occur in the early 3 to 5s. So just a little bit more about dominance. And I speak about dominance because I know that it can have such an important part in children's kind of body to brain connection. So again, always present things to your child in the middle. Never hand them into their left or their right hand. If your child is showing strong signs of dominance, in the early years, always ensure that they engage the helper hand. So the side that is not dominant needs to always be involved. It needs to be up on the table if they're colouring in. It needs to be out of their pocket. It can't be lying languid at the side of the table. It needs to be involved. Hold the page steady. Hold the stencil in place. Be involved in the action. Both sides are hugely important, not just the dominant side. If dominance doesn't occur naturally, it can significantly delay your child's processing speeds. Processing speeds are simply how we retrieve information in our brain. So if you think on 3 to 5 year olds, and we ask a young child or a few young children, what did you do on Saturday? And you'll have the first child that will very quickly tell you, I went to Granny's, I went to the cinema, and I went to the shop, and me and Daddy went to the beach. And that's a really speedy processing speed. So it's very likely that a child has established dominance in that case, where there is fluidity between both sides of the brain and body. Where you have another child where you ask the same question and there's a pause and they have to think, and they look for clues maybe around them, they listen to other people, they're just not processing the question and the information that they need to provide to you at such a speed as the other child. And that's absolutely okay. All children have different processing speeds, but establishing dominance will really help speed that up and make it more comfortable for children to retrieve that information in their brain. So it's vital that we offer young children adequate time to process and that we don't rush them. Often we will, if we see a child what we think is possibly struggling to get that information, they're not. They're just processing. So try to slow down and give them that chance to respond. If they continue to have quite a lengthy struggle, you can give them, buzzwords, give them the names of their friends or names of places to try and help them establish that information and give it out to you as such. So a wee bit more about dominance. Dominance is not just in the hand, it's in our feet, our eyes and our ears. Particularly, I think we kind of know, we always seem to know what hand we are, but I'm right-handed. I am left-eyed, I'm left-eared, and I'm also left-footed. So I have a mixed dominance. So sometimes fluid movement is difficult for me. So lots of movement is really important for me, that I can keep the fluidity within my body and brain. So full body dominance takes time, and movement is the key to helping it establish. When dominance is delayed or not yet established, it can be like having an alphabetized filing cabinet versus a non-alphabetized filing cabinet. And that's the best way that I can describe it. It was described to me years ago as that. When you go into a filing cabinet that's alphabetized and you're looking for Doherty, you go straight to the D's and you find Doherty. When you go into a non-alphabetized filing cabinet that everything is just put in a random order, it will take you a longer time to find that file. So it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with your learning. It means the information is absolutely there. It's definitely in there. It just takes us longer to retrieve it. So if we can pay attention to the speed of dominance and increase our children's movement and fluidity and look and kind of understand more about their dominance, then their ability to process and their ability to have that fluent answers to questions and conversation will increase. So just a little something for you if you want to know what eye is more dominant for you. If you all sit back from your screen and stretch out one of your hands and point your finger into the center of the red dot with your eye, both of your eyes open, and close your right eye and close your left eye. If whichever eye is open, when your finger stays still is your dominant eye. Often your finger will jump slightly on one eye, and that is your weaker eye, or that's your helper eye, and the other one is your dominant eye. It can often be much more useful and much more prevalent to understand if you do it at a distant point in a room. If you put your finger, just open both eyes, point your finger, put it on a spot, close both eyes, and the one that it wobbles mostly on is your helper eye, and the one that's open when it stays still is your dominant eye. So activities that children, can do at home, and of course at preschool or creche, or that we could, I suppose, continue to do at home possibly. And parents often, we do different stuff at home than we do in preschool. So it's nice for them to for parents to maybe understand the why behind the things that they do maybe in preschool. So lace and toys, you can't lace correctly without crossing your midline. If you have a large page, do not confine young children down to A4 or small copybook pages. Put them big newsprint A4 pages where they will do circles, where they will do a V, an X or a Y, or any types of those shapes. Those more difficult shapes, a V, an X and a Y, would not be coming into play until near 5. But all of those types of movement letters will a child will automatically cross their midline when they're doing them, as long as they're using big pages. Keep young children under 5 using large size pages where they have to cross one hand over to the other side of the body. Using an easel, an upright easel is exactly the same. When you're using an upright board that's quite big, you're going to cross your midline much more easy. And when a child is using an easel and they're upright, children that have difficulty holding pencils in the correct manner, or crayons or whatever it happens to be, if they use like the dagger grip or they hold them too far up, when you use an easel, your shoulder, your elbow and your wrist and your fingers are placed in the correct position to be able to hold writing materials correctly. So going back to the old easel use that they would have had maybe when they were a wee bit younger. Stencils for the older child, the helper hand stays involved. It holds the stencil whilst the dominant hand draws around the picture. Drawn around your hand, absolutely, putting your helper hand on the page and the child draws around your fingers, which they love doing, and then they can put little faces on the fingers and whatever. But if they do that, they're automatically crossing their midline. Drawing a house, again, putting the windows, and I think I have an example of that now in a second, so I'll show it to you. And also tearing around a picture with 2 hands. So a large picture of a cat or a dog or a house, and asking, a child to tear around the picture. So just tear out the picture out of the plain page. And, the manipulation that takes of fine and gross motor skills, because you will watch them use their core when they do this to not make a mistake. That the amount of crossing of the midline that goes on, it's really, really useful for establishing dominance. So there is on one side, your first side there, the left side is your example of a cross. So a child that's not crossing their midline would tend to draw something similarly like this, like branches of a tree. So it's just knowing what we see. So a child that's doing number 1 is crossing their midline. A child that's doing number 2 is not crossing their midline. So again, we just need more big pages and more fluent movements. Hand over hand, big swipes across the page, big swipes down. Just loads of practice. Drawing a scissors. Children that draw scissors and copy scissors, often I wouldn't do this up until, kind of 5 years of age. If they see the scissors as a direct crossover, we're establishing dominance and we're able to cross our midline. And if we are, now excuse my art I am by no means gifted, but you understand what I mean by seeing the scissors as two separate pieces. So we're not seeing the fluence and the connection. So we're not crossing our midline. Example. As well, we have the houses. So on the first side there, we see a nice kind of symmetrical house. And on the other side, we see a child that has stayed over to the right on the page that they have tried to fill in the house. And again, not using all of the page, not crossing their midline. And these are all things that are, you will see them. And as a child's dominance starts to establish, that you will see the movement, but it's useful for parents to understand what it is they actually see and what they can do to help. Again, lazy eights are fantastic. All your train tracks, I know now why they were all built in that way. So rolling cars, I print these off on big A3 sheets or bigger and laminate them and get them to run their cars around them again. Anything that's big that establishes that crossover is really, really good to establish dominance. And to be able to freely do a lazy eight, which is an eight on its side, as we can see, is actually quite difficult. I struggled with it myself when I was doing facilitated training where you would use your flip chart to try and explain that. It takes me a second to work out how to draw the sideways eight, so it's something that can be practiced by young children, and it's really useful for developing fluency. Again, lacing. You've got to cross your midline to be able to lace, and you can make the lacing activities much more difficult. So that the one on the left there is your lacing. It's like the sewing rather than the lacing of the beads, all needing crossing of the midline fluency. Again, drawing a line to match the things that are the same. We're definitely looking at your 5 to 6 year old here. So children, that are crossing the midline are up and down there to the kettle and the cup. And children that aren't, you can see in the blue line that we're not crossing the midline, but we know what we're being asked to do, but we're not happy crossing the midline. Or if you see the one that goes out round the outside, which my now 28-year-old did when he was 4, when I thought he was trying to keep the page nice and tidy. I now know that I didn't know what I was talking about. So it's all just knowing what we see. I just wish I had a known when my children were younger. So some more activity. So simple activities. Spot the difference. Hugely important for working memory. Bingo from a distance. Bingo cards, colored cards. Standing like 3 to 4 feet away from children and getting them to look down at their coloured bingo card, look up at you. Do you have the elephant? Looking down again. Yes, I have the elephant. Looking up again. Yeah, I definitely have the elephant. Yes, can I have the elephant? We are lending attention. We're doing what happens in the classroom. So rather than sitting beside your child when we're doing bingo and matching games, stand away from them so they can lend and practice lending that attention to you, which is something that skill that they need for school. Again, copying patterns, building block patterns and giving them the exact same amount of blocks, and they have to copy that pattern. So again, they're looking up at your pattern, and keep it simple. Initially, it has to be simple. So they're looking up and they're looking down and they're thinking, okay, so the yellow goes here and the blue goes here and the green goes on top. That is so important that skill will be transferred over into the classroom as they get older. Play positioning games. I spoke about positioning games in the 0 to 3, behind the box, in front of the box, beside the box. And as our children grow on this kind of spiral, you'll understand where the spiral bit comes in. As they grow, we make that more difficult. Put the doll in the box and you stand behind the box. Put the book beside the box, the doll in the box, and you stand behind the book. Much more difficult. But a child will never know who they are unless they know where they are. Children need to be comfortable with their entire bodies before they can be the best version of themselves. We need to do all the ing words, throwing, kicking, catching, jumping, skipping, whatever it happens to be. All of those simple movements that are part of growing up are vital for establishing dominance, establishing growth and skill sets. And we really need to encourage them more. Target practice linked so much to judgment skills. So giving children, 10 things of different weights and sizes and get them to throw it into a target. Obviously start off with a large target or a large box to make it easy, and then reduce down the size of your target, and always change the weights of the items. Unfortunately, when we buy a box of bean bags, they're all the same size and weight, which doesn't help with judgment skills. We need to, know, well, this is lighter, so we need to throw it harder. This is more heavy, so we need to be more precise and slow. And those judgment skills are something that children need to learn. Shadow match, you'll see in all the books, they also come home from school. The shadow match, and I often wondered, well, what exactly is this about? So shadow match encourages visual discrimination, and the reason why it does that is because it doesn't rely on any other details other than the shape of the object to identify the pattern. And this is a huge prerequisite for being able to identify numbers, words, and letters. We need to understand the shape of words and letters to remember what they look like. So shadow match is the first step to that. So other important activities. Plasticine and dough, obviously for building up the muscles in the hands and the fingers, really important. Obviously creativity and all of that, but it really helps with the fine motor skills and the ability to be able to hold their crayons and pencils. Reversibility, which I spoke about last week, reversibility is so important. It's important for maths and understanding numbers, and particularly subtraction and the idea of less and more. So again, reverting back to your car trips, adding in more places. So the car, the shop, the church, the chemist, the whatever it happens to be, and then reading them all out, going back again, so that children can build up a reversible mind map. We need to read books backwards, read them from the front, and if they are stage books like going to bed, getting dressed, or anything that kind of happens in a sequence, read them from the back also. Mold and dough, moving it in reverse. I have a ball, now I have a snake, and now I have a ball again. Those reversible activities are so important, because when it comes to it, addition, when children go into school, is, it's easier, should I say. It's not easy for every child, but it's easier. It's the easiest option. Subtraction and division are hugely challenging for a lot of children, and subtraction and division are based on the idea of reversibility. So that is your basis of understanding how to think in reverse. Again, sizes, lengths, and grading and sorting. Anything that encourages that categorization of items will help children to control that information overload that's been given to them hugely on a daily basis. So sizes, lengths, and grading. I use some simple stuff like straws, different color straws. I cut them up into all different shapes and sizes, and I encourage parents to do, pick me out the small green, now pick me out the biggest blue, now where's the biggest blue, now where's the smallest red. Simple interactive activities that you can spend 5 minutes doing whilst you're waiting on the spuds to boil. So continuing puzzles and jigsaws for pattern recognition and spelling. We need to encourage children to get back to the jigsaw making, back to the puzzles that have loads of different pieces, whether it's magnets or whatever it happens to be, that all individual elements come together to make one thing. That is the same, if we have 20 pieces in a puzzle, they all come together to make a Paw Patrol, or they all come together to make Harry Potter. Same thing for spelling, BALL. Those individual letters come together to make the word ball. So we have to have that good basis of pattern recognition in puzzles that have loads of pieces that come together to make one. We need to encourage their thinking through like scientific things and creative things, such as what would happen if, what would happen if I dropped the ball? What would happen if I dropped the book? The ball would bounce, the book would not. Scientific things, getting them up at the sink, filling the sink full of water for 10 minutes. Just a simple activity that you can do whilst you're doing other stuff. Give them 10 items and ask them to choose before they drop them into the water. Will it float or will it sink? Very simple ideas like that is so important for the basis of scientific and creative learning going into school, where it is a huge part of the curriculum. So more play. You'll be fed up listening to me about play at the end of this, but play listening games. So there's no coincidence that the word listen and silent have the same letters, just in a different order. We cannot listen if we are not silent to do the listening. So we have to encourage children to understand how to slow down and listen. So play the shh. What do you hear? And a child normally will answer you very quickly and say nothing. But if we no, listen, wait, and then they'll hear the beep of the horn or the cow or whatever it happens to be in the environment that they're in, and it fine tunes down their listening skills. Every teacher, when children are going into school at 5 or 6, will tell you, if all my children can listen well, my job is so much easier, and we make so much more progress. If you think about going into a new classroom with 25 or more children these days, that nobody is able to listen or use their listening skills. Really, really important to make any progress initially. So going to do the early maths in the kitchen, the idea is, like we were talking about, the filling, the emptying. That's again reversible. I fill and I empty. This doesn't fit in here, but it fits in here. I fill it and I empty it. Stacking and unstacking, all of that. Judging, measuring, and amounts. Involve them in all of those simple games that we can do within the kitchen. Baking using simple 3 to 4 step recipes or ingredients and instructions. There's a lovely book out there. Oh gosh, it's out a long time. It's ingredients of 4. So everything in it is just simple things to make within the kitchen. That only takes 3 to 4 ingredients. There's a scone recipe there that I used a lot with parents. I'm not a great baker, so I need something that's very simple, and it's just, it means they have them done and made, and it doesn't take that huge effort for parents that just don't have the time to be baking at home. So that simple kind of 3-step recipe idea highlights the beginning, the middle, and the end of a process that is rooted in mathematical understanding. And the beginning, the middle, and the end is 1 + 2 is 3. That's how we see how things end up. We have to understand that process. And if you think 1 + 2 is 3, can be easy for a 5 to 6-year-old, but 3 - 2 is 1 is so much more difficult, and that is where your reversibility play comes in. The conservation of distance, number, and size. Good old Piaget is still hanging about there in our child development, and that in particular is really, really important, so that children understand that the distance between items do not alter the amount of items. If you have 5 items in a row that are spaced out, and you have 5 items in a row that are quite close together, and you ask a young child, which is which row has the most blocks, they are often, before counting skills come in, they are often more likely to tell you that it is the row with that takes up the longest space. So it's just encouraging them to see that they actually have the same amount. So it's pushing the blocks back together, letting them see that they're equal, that there's 5 in each row, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in both rows, and then sitting them on top of each other so that they can clearly see that the conservation of distance, number, and size is not altered by the amount of space between the objects. I spoke about classification and sorting last week, so it's really important that we, encourage young children to be able to pick out all the colours, all the shapes, all the animals, all the things that they might find in the bedroom, things they might find in the kitchen. That helps them with sorting all that huge amount of information that they get from everyday life. And that stops them from becoming overwhelmed, and it stops them from becoming anxious and worried about things. So the next step up when they're 3 to 5 is association, and being able to associate things that go together. So things that go together, simply knife and fork. There's loads of puzzles out there, socks and shoes, candles and birthday cake. There's loads of nice simple puzzles. You can get simple things off the internet that you can just print off and use, just simple association games. What goes together? Gloves and hands. you know, all of those. So that's your next step up from classification and categorizing. So, as I said, it's vital for organising thoughts, aiding concentration and focus. It eliminates that information overload that's vital for school success and lessens the anxiety and confusion, which often puts young children off school very early in their school journey. And that is where we come up against our school refusal and our developing anxiety all around school. When it is fluent for children when they go into school, that anxiety and confusion and overload is so much more less, and that's what we need it to be. We need it to be reduced as much as possible. So some more activities. I know I'm kind of going through a lot of activities here, but these are all the really important activities that are so important for parents to be able to play with their children, particularly between the ages of 3 and starting school. So reference to time is really important, but not teaching clock time. Make references when the big hand is at 3, when the big hand is at 6 or 9, or things like that. We need to use words such as first, next and last, before, now and after, later, today, tomorrow. All of those things are very much linked to the beginning, the middle and the end. So as we get beginning, middle and end understood, we need to move up then to our first, next and last, and further cement that symmetrical learning. So sequence and understanding of the ebb and flow of time is vital for a child's sense of understanding and control of their day. When they understand sequence and the how time works in a day, they have a little bit more control. They know what's going to happen before school, after school, you know, before play school, before we go to granny's, before we go to the shops, afterwards, all of that. So they understand the ebb and flow of their day. So it's really important. And remember last week I spoke about the ebb and flow of time and, you know, not over scheduling. You know, trying to have days where children are no longer overscheduled, where they have to understand their boredom play and make it useful for themselves. And that's where we can fill those gaps with movement, hopefully, and not sedentary play. So planting a seed, play with sequence puzzles, you know, anything like that where they can see sequence. This comes first and this comes at the end. Color and shape hunts. You know, rather than teaching color and shape through the old traditional way, I suppose, is this is yellow, this is blue, what color's your jumper, what color's your shoes, all this pressure questioning. You know, send our children on color hunts. Give them a yellow sheet of paper and off you go and find me 5 things that match this color yellow, and let them take the color with them so that they can color match. When they color match, they'll sort and classify it and remember and retain it so much easier. Same for shapes. Give them the shape and let them go around the house and find something that matches the shape. Memory development I spoke about as object permanence last week. So, you know, understand them that when objects go out of sight, that they haven't just ceased to exist. So now we're up at the 4 to 5 year olds and we're going to work on memory development through playing games like Pairs or Happy Families. I think we all call it different things all around the country. So Pairs is what I called it. Happy Families is what people call it here in Donegal. So it is literally just the matching pairs cards where they're all face down, and if you lift one up and you get a cow, and then you lift another one up and it's a sheep, so they don't match, so you have to turn them back over and replace them. And then the next child or mum goes and lifts the cow, and maybe hopefully she might, you know, it's just remembering the positioning and being able to hold in the mind's eye the picture of what it is that you're trying to remember. And that skill has to be facilitated. Concentration, simple snap with not with a deck of cards with spades and hearts, but picture cards, really important. Do the snap, really good for concentration and response times. So there's a wee sequence puzzle. We used to be able to get our hands on loads of these in LifeStart, but unfortunately they're just so expensive. But these were great because children were able to categorize into color, they were able to categorize into size, and then they were able to categorize into shape and gradient. So that sequence puzzle, you know, had so much in it. And again, not all singing, all dancing, lights and sounds. So it was really important how the parent would introduce this puzzle. You know, we need to engage ourselves with children to introduce puzzles like this that maybe don't have enough feedback for children that are very much used to a lot of technology and technological kind of feedback these days. And there's our other sequence puzzle. We would have jigsaws that would do the tadpole into the frog, or the butterfly life cycle, or things like that. So all really useful for them to see, the stages in time. So some more activities. Fine motor skills, really important, as we spoke about using the easel for children to be able to get their shoulder, elbow and wrist and fingers into position. Mold and dough does the same thing, really encourages the the muscles in the fingers and the thumbs. Tong games, anything that has little tongs that they have to grasp, are going to build up the muscles in the fingers for good writing, or for good hold. Peel and stickers, again, anything that has that little pincer grip. Clothes pegs, jigsaws, construction pieces and Lego. Connect four. We don't need to have to learn how to connect four, but put all the red on one side, put all the yellow on the other. Again, very simple, very useful for, for children with additional needs. We use Connect Four quite a bit. The nuts and bolts. So that idea I spoke about last week, about being able to do one thing with one side of the body and something else with the other. So being able to hold the bolt in place and to be able to screw off the nut. So we're holding with the right side and we're turning with the left side. Tea sets. We don't see enough lovely little tiny tea sets anymore. When you look at a child that can very cleverly navigate the use of a tea set, their fine motor skills are particularly good. If you think on, holding the little cup, you often see a few little fingers being stuck out there as well. Using triangular short pencils are really useful for children that are struggling with their fine motor hold and their pincer grip. So triangular short pencils make it a little bit more comfortable for children to hold properly. And if a lot of children hold high up the pencil and too far up, just cut the pencil in half and use a short pencil. You don't, we spend a lot of time trying to correct and bring the child's hand down. Just give them a short pencil and it takes away that option. Snakes and ladders. We used to bring out snakes and ladders at the very last issue at 5, when we would bring out the growing child in Life Start. So when the child reached 5, they would get their certificate of completion of the Growing Child Life Start program, and we would bring them snakes and ladders, because snakes and ladders incorporates everything that we've spoke about from 0 right up to 5. It covers the counting, covers the colors, covers the reversibility, because we're going up the ladder, but we're reversing down the snakes. So it has taken turns and sharing and all of that. So really, really good snakes and ladders. And if you can get your hands on a big snakes and ladders that, children have to kind of cross their midline whilst they're playing it, even better. So remember the music, dance and rhymes that we spoke about last week, but adding in kind of the sequence rhymes, like the recall. So Old MacDonald, or There Was an Old Woman Who Swallowed a Fly, anything that they have to recall in order, the sequence of events, hugely important for recall and retention. Action rhymes that combine movement with speech. So we were talking about hands, shoulders, knees and toes for the 0 to 3. So again, up with whatever happens to be the in thing and the new dance or whatever. Action rhymes that combine movement are hugely important. And if we can combine it with speech and rhyme and talking, it's really helpful for their speech fluency. Again, classical music. Remember that classical music has all the pitches and tones necessary for good speech. So if we use classical music and musical variety, we're covering all the basics. Mirror image games, being able to copy, reminds me, I'm trying to do Zumba. I was going one way and she was going the other. It really was difficult for me. So mirror image games for young children, great for modeling. Now we do not have our back to them. We're facing them, but we want them to understand position, and that our position and our movement is opposite to theirs. So that's, it's important that they can do those mirror image games. So a few more activities: thinking, listening and music. and moving, nothing more useful than musical chairs. Have you ever witnessed a group of young children doing musical chairs? The amount of working memory, thinking, problem solving, listening, and moving together that goes on during a simple game of musical chairs. We just don't play it enough anymore. Animal walks, slither like a snake, walk like an elephant, put your own body into the movement of something else. A really difficult skill for a 3-year-old, but as you practice that, that should become more automatic as you reach 5. Busy pictures or Where's Wally? So we have a busy picture there. It is a Where's Wally one. Concentration. Absolutely, really, really important to sit down and find where is Wally, or where is the woman with the yellow towel that's eating an ice cream. Simple things like that, where a child has to slow down and concentrate and really listen to what it is that you have described, and really take in the scene and become more observant. The under threes, they have beautiful Osborne books out there where there's a little tiny bird or a little tiny duck hidden in every page. So it's hidden, but it's much bigger than the Where's Wally. So it's for the 0 to 3 age, and that is the start of it. And then you would move up to the more busy pictures and the Where's Wally for the older children. So using the EST words, now we need to move on from big and small, because we have a full understanding of big and small when we've moved past 3, or you would hope. So we have now loudest, tallest, smallest, happiest, using all of those EST words to pique a child's interest in all the fabulous things about speech that they haven't just yet, quite understood, but it's piquing their interest. So use it attached to things that they love. Encourage the WH questions. That can be quite tormenting, to be quite honest. If they're continuous. Why, where, what? All of those questions are really important. And if we don't have the answer, it's very, very easy to tell a child, I actually don't know, but maybe we'll find out. And that in itself is a connection that can't be replaced. And that always reminds me of when we go in to visit parents and we don't know the answer to the question that they've asked us. And I always think that parents are much more likely to become more engaged and connected with us if we tell them, I actually don't know, but I will find out and I will get back to you. It's okay for us not to know the answer. There's loads of information out there. We're not going to know the answer to everything. And I really do feel that parents become more connected to you and more understanding if we can be honest. The magic cushion game for core stability. This is often one that's played in my house. with not just with children. So the magic cushion game is simply where they stand on a large cushion, and what we're trying to do is to build up their core stability, which is really important for their balance. And I'm going to go into the importance of balance shortly when I talk about the sensory system. So being able to turn over that magic cushion with your feet without touching the floor sounds difficult. It is very, very much doable, particularly for children. So you can bring back maybe the old idea of the floor being lava, and you need to turn over the cushion, but you can't step on the lava. Really, really useful for balance and core stability, that children need to be able to sit at their desk at school, to be able to write. If you cast your mind back maybe to when you were at school yourselves, and maybe it was you, maybe it was other people. It possibly would have, when I look back, I struggled to sit still. I was always, wrapping my legs around the legs of the chair, leaning back in my chair, kind of lying over my desk. So my core stability can't have been very good. So when you have good core stability, you can sit upright and concentrate and do your work without your body feeling tired. There's the curly straws that I spoke about last week, that are really useful for lip seal and the oral muscular activities. If we do anything like recorders, whistles, anything that we can blow through, will encourage lip seal, and lip seal is really useful for good speech. So anything at all that encourages children to either suck by pulling in, and A lot of ordinary straight straws, they're too loose and they don't cause lip seal. So the curly straws are the best. So able to suck in or to blow down and make the bubbles in a big bowl of water. Really, really important for building up their feelings and their confidence about their mouth. You know, you'll see a lot of young children that maybe dribble a lot or their nose runs and they're not really aware of it. So it tells you that that kind of area of their face is maybe asleep a little and it needs some help to awaken. And once we are in much more control of our tongue muscles and our lips and all of that around our mouth, of course it's going to help our speech and our pronunciation. One of my favorite things to do with 5-year-olds is to draw face and body portraits. And paying attention to what it is you actually see. So if you just look there to the picture, that is it's actually a 6-year-old boy. Having, what is it they've left out? What is it they've put in? Usually the things that are very big are the things that are really important or that they feel most about their body. This little boy has quite big feet. He has no hands. The heart is there now. He could be drawn somebody else. There's nice spiky hair. There's no ears though. So, we have quite a big mouth, which is good. So the speaking's probably quite good, but maybe the listening's not so good because both people here have no ears. So ears are not an important thing. And often because we don't see our ears, we don't think about them too much at that age when we're drawing pictures. So that to me, I would be encouraging a parent to go back and do games about their hands and their fingers, things about their ears, talking to them about what was so significant about that big heart. Because there's a lot of stuff going on there, and you will find out some absolutely beautiful information that you're not going to get unless you ask. And the answers are in their lovely artwork. So obstacle courses and body manipulation, movement, navigation, practice creates fluency. So we've been looking at young movement as in tummy time, crawling, sitting up, rolling, all of that. Now we're looking at navigating obstacle courses, swings, slides, roundabouts, all of it. As much of it as possible. Trampolines, hopping, walking along thin lines, hopscotch, bikes, balance boards, all of that. As much movement as you can incorporate into a child's day will help establish fluency of learning new skill sets. Balance is a really important skill for our children to learn, as our balance plays a huge part in our ability to learn. If we can't balance and stabilize ourselves, how are we able to lend attention, become focused, and all of that? So balance is massively important. So the link between balance, movement, and sensory. Remember to get our children moving. We know this. We now know this, that it's important. But prior to difficult situations or demands, get your children to move. If we know that a child has difficulty in a certain setting or difficulty, struggles in Granny's or struggles, in Tesco, but mum has to go and she has to take the child. A movement session prior to the demands of this setting that is quite overwhelming for a child will have so much positive impact on their tolerance levels whilst they're in Granny's or in Tesco's. It's very simple, but it works. It will not remove the issue completely, but it may make it more manageable for you and make it more manageable for your child. The more movement they have, the more likely they are to be able to concentrate. Barefoot sensory experiences help children to become grounded and regulated. Get them into their bare feet as much as possible, where possible. Children cannot learn self-regulation without first being part of co-regulation. We cannot expect our children to self-soothe and self-regulate without us co-regulating with them and teaching them how to do this. Co-regulate always needs to come first. It's a bit like, connection before correction, co-regulate before self-regulate. So young babies, this self-soothing doesn't work unless we co-soothe, co-regulate, build it up first, and then they have learned the skills to be able to do that. Attention and focus is what will support them through future life skills, and balance is the root of attention and focus. If we don't have good balance, if we don't have core stability, our attention and our focus will be affected. So just a wee minute, a wee break. I'm going to take a mouthful of coffee here. Just have a wee think. How many senses are there? Do you have any sensory preferences or dislikes? How do you respond to stress or triggers? How does that feel? And how do the glimmers make you feel? And I use the word glimmers simply because we've got to have something good. Can't always be triggers. There's got to be things out there that we love. Do we like to put our feet up? Do we like a foot spa? Do we like a glass of wine? What is our glimmers and how do they make us feel? What is it we do for ourselves that make us feel good? So we all have sensory preferences. The senses are so important. Everything we do is based on sensory experiences because one or more of our senses is engaged in every single thing we do. So sensory is a huge part of development. So we all have 8 senses: touch, taste, smell, hearing, sight. The big one, vestibular, which is our balance, which we have just spoke about. Proprioception, I do wish they give them better words than this, which is our body position, our muscle awareness, our complete understanding of our body and its awareness in your environment, really. And interoception, which is our internal signals, such as knowing when you're hungry, knowing when you're tired, or particularly for the under 5s, knowing when you need to go to the toilet, which is a huge part of toilet training, which lots of parents struggle with. And if interoceptive sense is not developed, there is no amount of reward charts or fancy pants that is going to correct an underdeveloped interoceptive sense. So in particular, the interoception for us here in LifeStart, because we work with a lot of toilet train, interoception has become something that has really helped us out with a lot of toileting struggles. So the power of the 8 senses, just briefly going through them, because we all know the first 5. The auditory system processes and interprets sound information. The auditory abilities enable us to discriminate between background and foreground sounds. Seeing. The visual system brings information from the environment into the brain through the eyes. The olfactory system is important for eating, enhancing the pleasure of taste or alerting you to what you don't like or what should not be eaten. Smell also serves a function in our memory. So when you look at smell, it's not just what we smell in the moment. It stays there for quite a while, as I'm sure we know. So taste, the gustatory system provides information regarding the nature of the foods and liquids we taste. Touch, the largest sensory system, because everything's about touch. When we walk, we're touching the ground. When we move, everything is linked to touch. It's how we process information from sensory receptors in the skin. Movement. The vestibular system provides information about the position and acceleration of the head and the body and their relation to gravity. Sensations in the muscle and joints. The proprioceptive system processes sensations in the muscles and the joints. So if we move, if we bang into something, our body will let us know, oh, move around that, don't move around that, walk straight. As we grow, our proprioceptive system and our sense of navigating our environment improves. So, or if you think on maybe children that have dyspraxia or adults that are clumsy, proprioceptive system has not developed to its full potential. Internal sensation. So interoceptive system provides information about how the body organs feel and sensations from inside the body, such as hunger, thirst, tiredness, and toileting needs, which I have just spoke about. There is talk about a ninth sense being added, which would be exteroception, which is kind of like, maybe the best way to describe it is like your spidey sense, your gut feeling, because we're not sure, is that linked to every other sense, and we're just using the information from our experiences to understand kind of that gut feeling or your spidey senses. But as of yet, it hasn't been added, but I can see it possibly being added in the future. So all play is sensory play. I think for a long time, sensory play was very much associated with children with additional needs. It's not just for children with additional needs, it's for every child and every adult. Every child and every adult has sensory experiences every minute of every day. So it's a huge part of development and a huge part of learning. Sensory processing is a complex development, but having basic knowledge of sensory needs and presentations will help practitioners to help parents identify what may be causing roadblocks to learning and to help identify resources or activities to help. We don't need to be sensory clinicians, we don't need to be sensory practitioners, but just having the basic knowledge is really important, particularly when we are observing play activities and behaviour. So messy play is probably the one we think of first of all when we think of sensory play, but remember, every play is sensory. So the importance of Play-Doh, plasticine, modeling clay, paint, glitter, glue, slime, gloop, clean mud. If you don't know it, look it up on the internet. Clean mud is fabulous. Make an art box full of arts and crafts, encouraging parents, I think, to have an art box full of all this messy play stuff, because that they can just close up and put away, and if they then when they have to have a messy play session again, then everything is in the one space. Trying to go off and find this and find that and find the other does tend to put parents off. So we do encourage a box and keep the box for just solely for that reason. Learning to cut with safety scissors. It's a skill that is on the 3 to 4 developmental checklist from public health nurses, and also on our developmental check here for children. And we have a lot of children that have difficulty cutting with safety scissors, so we encourage don't drop Freddie on the floor. So Freddie is a little frog, and he goes between the elbow and the rib, and if they have to hold on to Freddie and cut. The problem that most children have with cutting with safety scissors is usually with the arm and the elbow going up high, as it moves up. So that is where the difficulty with the cutting goes. So if we put little Freddie or anybody, make up anything that rhymes or that's interesting, that will engage a child, and they can hold it between their elbow and their rib, it keeps their hand down, and lo and behold, their cutting with their safety scissors skill set improves. So use large pages for big arm movements, like I spoke about earlier. The big pages are the key. The big arm movements, if you think about all those huge arm movements that they're making on the big pages, if they're really fluent, when a child comes to go to school, or when we're up at 7 or 8, when we're looking at little small copybooks, and the need for writing with their cursive writing, that's cursive writing is quite difficult. So if we have loads of practice with huge arm movements, then the little ones will be so much easier. Go big first, and then go small. So using all of these activities for the molding, for developing the muscles in the fingers. Show children how to color, mix and shade. That adding black to make it dark, adding white to make it lighter. All of these things are so important. When your child creates a picture, put their name in the top left. If you remember from last week, we need to encourage our children to have a left to right visual field. So when a child does a picture, name in the top left, so we can draw their attention over to the left. The amount of pictures that I have seen coming home with the name and the date down in the bottom corner, up in the top corner with a happy face if you're going to put it up on the fridge or wherever. So add a frame around their name if necessary. Remember kind of doing maybe nameplates. You'll notice maybe that children, when they're in play school, they'll go and maybe they'll hang up their coat and they'll have a little Paw Patrol, the Fimbles or Barney or whoever it happens to be. Now I'm showing my age because they're probably ancient. That's where they know that they hang their coat, because that picture is their hook. As your child gets older, they need to be able to identify their own name. So that is where it's important that if we can frame their name. I have a picture of it now as I go on, so I'll leave that for now and I'll show it to you just as I come to it, because it's easier to explain when you see it. Always remember that that helper hand needs to stay engaged for that fluency and dominance to do its job. So always watch out for that, the helper hand to be up on the table and engaged in the activity. Get outside and use all your senses for maximizing your child's potential. You cannot replace outside for sensory development. Outside is fantastic. There's your name in a frame. So seeing your own name without a picture prompt is really useful skill to move on from the picture up to just the letters. So put your name in a frame, so you go down with the G, you go up with the L, so that they see the formation of the word coming together. Remember, bringing all the separate letters together to make one word. If you think on a child going into a shop, they very easily identify their favorite chocolate or bar or cereal, and look at how they're written. They're all in a frame. So a creativity boost. When we do give a creativity boost, it enhances our child's cognitive development. It boosts their emotional expression. Children that have difficulty with challenging behavior, you would be surprised about, how what a positive impact art sessions and creativity sessions have on their behavior. It allows them to kind of let off steam a little bit. So it also enhances social skills. It encourages motivation, curiosity, and imagination. And as I say, it has a connection to behavior, and behavior can often give us the biggest clues in child development. Child behavior is what we're, when we are observing child development, behavior is going to give us the biggest amount of information as to where our child is at. So what exactly is behavior? So beneath every behavior is a feeling, and beneath every feeling is a need. And when we meet that need, rather than focus on the behavior, we begin to deal with the cause and not the symptom. And that's a famous quote by Ashley Warner. I'm a child and family psychologist. So as a connected practitioner, we will see all behavior as communication. We're looking for the root cause, or the source of the behavior will yield better long-term solutions for everyone. So in other words, if biting is the behavior, let's find the cause. What is the cause? Is it teething? Is it frustration? Is it toothache? Is it sensory? What is it? Find the source. We will never be able to fix the behavior or help the behavior if we can't find the source. And maybe we might stop a child from lashing out because we have maybe looked at the behavior itself and had a short-term solution, but that behavior is coming from somewhere, so it's going to come out in something else. So lashing out behavior that has been stopped could come out in biting, or come out in head banging. If we don't find the source, the behavior is always going to be there in some form or another. And that is, it is a huge skill to be able to find the source. But I think it's something that we need to continuously remind parents. The outward behavior is not the problem. It's not causing the behavior. Find out the cause and deal with the cause, and long-term solutions then are, they're so much easier. So finding the source is key, and remember that all children follow their own developmental path. Neurodiversity and all other children, nobody develops at the same time. So sensory processing and the link to behavior. Sensory processing is very much linked to our emotional state, how regulated we are, and the existence of stress. And the existence of stress for young children, unfortunately, is very evident. We do have to realize that stress is huge, is there for a lot of our young children. When we are dysregulated, our tolerance levels to stimuli is significantly reduced, which makes sense. We all know as adults, if we are, already annoyed or overstimulated, we just don't have the tolerance levels. When we're calm and regulated, our tolerance levels rise, and often we can put up with more. Those who do not have sensory processing disorder will adjust automatically to income and stimuli and respond appropriately. And those with a challenged sensory system will become dysregulated, stressed, anxious, and may display challenging behaviors, which makes so much sense. You know, if challenging behavior cannot be identified as trauma or something that you can, very clearly see the link to, we have got to explore sensory processing as the culprit, really. So what does it look like for children and adults? Loud noises, busy environments, lighting, smells, touch, lack of movement, too much movement, lack of stimuli, too much stimuli. All of this can have a massive impact on a child's behavior. And I think there is a misunderstanding on children's presentations when it comes to sensory. Some children can be hypo or hyper, so we can be either understimulated or we can be overstimulated to certain stimuli. But this can change depending on where they are, how they feel, or loads of other environmental factors. They can also be under or overstimulated in different sensory areas, such as they can love bright lights but dislike loud noises, or they can dislike particular loud noises that are a trigger but be able to listen to a really loud music. So, the barking of the dog might be a trigger, but their favorite song played loud is not a trigger. So it's useful to remember that children do not present in the same way all the time, and their sensory processing and their sensory presentation can change continuously. But you will very much, as you understand the sensory system and as you observe your children, you can very much clearly see children's responses to the different 8 sensory systems. So look deeper, help parents look just beyond the outward behavior in their young children. Get them to look deeper. Look at the source, find the source, and we find a solution. So connecting first and correcting second. So as I said last week, connect first before we ever correct children. Remember to look beyond the behavior itself. Remember, connection seeking behavior, not attention seeking behavior. If we continue to look at behavior that challenges as attention seeking behavior and not distressed behavior or connection seeking behavior, we need to take it from a more positive viewpoint, because it will change our response. We respond to something completely differently if we see it as connection seeking and do not see it as attention seeking. Respond to our children, don't react. Reacting, is too quick. It's often, followed up by guilt because we've done the wrong thing, and we know we've done the wrong thing. Look, we're all human. We have all reacted in many's a time, but our aim is to respond appropriately. And I like to use the pair. I give wee pictures of the pair and I write on them, pause, empathize, acknowledge, and reconnect. And that gives the parent just a wee breather when they're really under stress, when they're really under pressure, when the behavior is really, really challenging them, not to react and just pair. So remember, we are all human, and sometimes we do react rather than respond when we are under pressure. Try to use the pair approach to starve reaction and feed connection. And I think that's lovely. If we can starve reaction and feed connection, we're going to have far more positive long-term solutions. Regulate your own emotions before ever attempting to regulate a child. Co-regulation before self-regulation. Regulate yourself before trying to regulate a child. Do not try to reason with a child who is in a dysregulated state. They are impossible to reach. There is a lot of behavior strategies, with parents who are trying their very, very best with very challenging behavior, but there's a lot of words going on. There's a lot of threats. There's a lot of promises. There's a lot of rewards will come if you stop it, or if you don't stop it, this is going to happen. Connect with the child first. It's so important. There's no point in trying to reason with them whilst they're in a dysregulated state. The part of the brain that is able to reason when you're dysregulated has shut down. So you're wasting your time. So we do the 3 R's. We respond first, regulate second, and reason third. It's Dr. Bruce Perry's approach to difficult behavior, and it really does help. So reasoning is when we talk with the child about what happened or why it happened, where we look for causes or explanations or talk about consequences. Children cannot reason until they are fully regulated. So even if we are just saying, if you stop this behavior now, we'll go to granny's later, or we'll get whatever it is they're looking for, that forget about it. Just respond. Do what you have to do in the moment to regulate the child. You don't have to give in to material demands. Your connection is enough. Once you connect, respond, wait for them to regulate, ensure they're regulated, ensure that you are then regulated, and then is the time to reason and discuss the behaviour that happened. So if we deal only with the presenting behaviour and not the cause, it is likely that other behaviours will emerge in their place. So if we remove the slapping or the hitting out, biting, kicking, something else will appear that often can be more difficult to manage and more difficult to get rid of. So we need to see the child before the behaviour, see the source. Be mindful of environmental factors that may prove difficult for your child, and try to adapt them so that the child will not become overwhelmed or withdrawn and can be the best version of themselves. It is important to look for your child's triggers and understand your child's triggers. And as I said earlier, maybe try a quite vigorous movement session before taking them into something that has environmental triggers. Basic sensory play such as messy play, outdoor play, movement and dance, whole body learning, lights and sounds, etc. All of that should all be utilised to help each individual child. Create a sensory profile for each of the 8 senses. I've done this with a lot of parents and it's really, really helped. So create a profile, have your touch, your taste, and have it all separate, and write in, what helps and what doesn't for each child in those 8 sensory profile categories. It's really useful. You often see things that you haven't seen before. So sensory profiles are useful to study following incidents of connection seeking behaviours. So those distressed times for both of us, it's a really useful tool for us to identify triggers. The fight, flight or flock, I absolutely love this, and I see it so many times, particularly in environments where there is groups of parents and groups of children, parent and toddler groups, things like that. So before connection seeking behaviours occur, before the fight or flight mode is activated, children often show signs of flock, and it is something that is often missed by ourselves as practitioners, and also by parents. This can often be seen as kind of the agitated, the irritable, I hate these words, the whining or the whinging stage, but it's often a word used to describe this stage. So this stage can often be mistaken for negative behaviour, but what it really is it's a sign from a child that they are struggling. It is at the stage where we can kind of intervene and we can stop it. We can acknowledge a child's distress, move them away, attempt to diffuse it before the feelings become too big to manage. So it's where the child comes over, maybe at mother and toddler, where they're pulling at your leg, they're stopping you from having your coffee, they're stopping you from having your conversation, and where mum is pushing them away or dad's pushing them in to go and play with Thomas, go and play, look, here's your car, here's whatever, off you go. And they keep returning, but they're not getting that need filled. So that's the flocking stage. That's kind of where they're just not content. So the flocking stage is something that's often missed, but it is a really big clue as to impending behaviour, and it is important to be attuned to it. It will help parents greatly to understand this, as it builds connection with the child, as they see you as a sign of safety and protection, and they show this by flocking to you. And I think when it's highlighted to parents that when this behaviour happens, it's because they see you as a sign of safety. You're a sign of love and safety to them, so they are coming to you, they are flocking to you to give them what they need to be able to move away from you safely. And once that is explained to parents, they realize how huge their impact is at that moment, and they put that into practice. Identifying executive functioning skills, which I just spoke about at the beginning, and what they are and what part they play in development is also a really valuable tool for parents to acquire and for practitioners. For years, I used the word executive functioning skills, but it was only when I really did a bit of research into it and a little bit of training that I thought, oh gosh, it's hugely important and covers so much development. So your executive functions are a set of cognitive skills used to exercise control over your thoughts and your behavior. So executive functions are enhanced by all the quality activities and interactions previously discussed, and all the quality reciprocal activities that we spoke about that equip children with skill sets as they grow older. So when physical, social, emotional, cognitive, and sensory development appears fluent and optimal in all children, we see traits appear that enhance their abilities across all the developmental pillars. So we have fluency across that we see our children, become an optimal version of themselves. And those preschool years are a critical period for developing our executive functioning skills. So executive function skill sets, it all comes from the free prefrontal cortex of the brain, the the function room, as I call it, where everything really goes on together, and then we direct it all the stuff off into different rooms in the brain. So in the functioning room, we have, the controlled ability to initiate, impulse control, organize and plan, cognitive flexibility, and task switching, which, remember we spoke about the flexibility and flexible play and flexible thought last week. That's so important. Our working memory, what are we actually doing right now and why are we doing it? And, that temporary storage of information, using the information that we're using right now that we may not have to, retrieve shortly, that it's just a temporary storage of what we're doing right now. Okay, what page are we on now? Yeah, okay, page 12. Right, where we, what color do we need to use? All that temporary storage of work and memory. The emotional regulation, linked so much to the impulse control, to be able to sustain and lend attention, which I've spoke about throughout, to self-check and self-monitor our actions and our play, and to ultimately problem solve using higher brain functioning. And when children have developed all these fabulous skills, their executive functioning skill set, is fluent. It is providing them with a fabulous platform to move on into their next stage of development. So when we look at complex behavior, it's often when executive functions are struggling. So if you're presented with complex behavior or escalating behavior challenges, whether they're connection seeking or not, it's important to seek guidance from other professionals. We're not clinicians, we are home visitors. We, whether we are there to deliver a program like LifeStart or not, we're not speech and language therapists, we're not behavior therapists, but we're there to seek guidance from other professionals in each of these areas that our parents have now identified as complex. So complex behaviors are difficult to understand and they need expert advice and professional support. Encourage parents to keep logs of factual data so that you can share these with professionals. It's really important. When I was told many years ago, when my son was only 3 or 4, to please keep logs of data around his behavior and his presentation, I thought, do you not think I have enough to be doing? My goodness, those logs of factual data have served me so well over the years that I don't know what I would have done without them. It was probably one of the most important recommendations that was ever given to me. It was a great tip. So really encourage parents to keep those notes, keep the data, and it's much easier when you have the data to explain complex behavior to other professionals. Everyone working together, parents and professionals, they have vital information to share with each other to benefit the child and also the family unit. A collaborative approach should always be welcomed by all. We don't always get that as home visitors, but I would, never ever underestimate our worth as home visitors. We are hugely important and often, one of the most important people that go into the home to support that family. So do not underestimate your worth for sure. So growing up, we need to add to children's responsibilities, their choices. We need to move their boundaries, definitely. We can't keep them, we can't have the same boundaries for a 3-year-old as we do for a 5-year-old. We have to enable them to make their own decisions and their choices. The most important thing for a 3 to 5-year-old is not to label them. Oh, Rosie is very shy, or Michael is just so bold. Oh my goodness, he's so bold, he never stops. Once a child continuously hears these labels, they start to behave the way that the label has described them. They then start to think that they are that way. They're shy, they're busy, or whatever it happens to be, or they never sit still. Then they start to feel it, and then they become it. And once they become it, it's so difficult to change it. So it's really important that parents get out of the habit of labeling behaviors, and they often do it to excuse behaviors to other people. And other people and what they think, really, it's not worth making your child feel and becoming something that they are not, just down to specific behaviors at the time. Introduce routines and consistency in the big aspects of life, and flexibility for the other stuff. Remember the flexibility. We need to teach our children flexibility so that they can adapt to change. We need to focus on positive behaviour and build on strengths. We're lucky here at LifeStart that we have a strengths-based programme, so we always build upon the strengths first. Encourage parents to understand that ups and downs in confidence. A child might run into school or play school or run off to play with their friend one day and then not be able to do it the next day. It is not the end of the world. It is just growing up and getting, understanding that, there's a big wide world out there. So it's just encouraging their confidence. And, if there's a change in confidence, just go with it and encourage it and help them make positive changes. Continue promoting the right brain with pretend and imaginative play, whilst the left brain is starting to really, really, kick in there and develop. Support parents to identify when their child is ready for school is vital for smooth transitions. Age should not be an identifier. Stage, we all are aiming towards the five-year-old start, if at all possible. Resilience and happiness going forward is what is important. Remember, readiness for school is not based on intelligence. It's more to do with the social and emotional level or stage that your child is at. Intelligence could be well ready for school, but emotionally, if we're not ready, it's going to be a big challenge. But the most important part about starting school is that parents and children are happy in where their child's development is at, and they're both happy going forward. Those self-help skills that we need to encourage is independent tasks, toileting. I could do a whole day on toileting. To speak out and know their full name and age, sharing and taking turns, a huge problem. We have loads of incidences with difficulties with sharing. So many parents contact us about sharing and taking turns. Children need to know how to receive before they learn how to share and give away things that are important to them. Poor children at 3 and 4 years of age, they go into a communal area with other children. Let Michael have a go of your toy. Give Michael your favorite truck. We as adults would not walk into a room and give people that we don't know a go at our favorite handbag. It just wouldn't happen. So children at home, to encourage the understanding of sharing and taking turns, we need to do it at home with them first. Share with them first so that they know how to receive. Would you like one of my biscuits? Would you like one of my crisps? Would you like one of my pens? Would you like, mommy's turn? Your turn. Mommy's turn? Your turn. Children need to learn how to receive before they can ever learn how to share and give away. So reverse it. We're not teaching children how to share. We're teaching them how to receive first. They're too young to understand how to share unless we establish how to receive. We need to enhance our children's feelings of power by showing empathy more than sympathy. We often, we are very sympathetic to young children, and we absolutely should be. But when it's something that we feel that they could probably solve themselves, we should be better placed showing a bit of empathy rather than sympathy. Oh, you poor wee thing, I'll fix it, I'll do it. Empathy. That must have been very upsetting for you. What could we do? What could you do next week to make that better? So reassure and encourage. but make sure they know you believe in their abilities. You know, don't ever make them think that we think that they can't do it. So learning and growing, perseverance to finish tasks, pause in the middle of what you're doing and then go back to them and put them away. A big skill that's needed for school. We don't do enough of it. Challenges are really important, but never ever set your child up to fail, or never set them up to frustrate them in a task. Talk to them about non-verbal cues, body language and facial expressions. You know, do I look happy? Do I look sad? What is my face telling you? What is my body telling you? Talk about feelings and emotions. The more we talk about feelings and emotions, the more they will be able to identify them. And feelings and emotions have, you know, a huge base in behaviour. Go back to the old fairy tales. Although we're reading loads and loads and loads of books together, go back to the fairy tales. Use the Little Red Riding Hood. Don't change the ending. Don't change the scary bit in the middle. We have to get our children used to a little bit of uncomfortable feeling. And the best place to experience uncomfortable feelings is when you're in a safe environment. And fairy tales, you know, they very much reflect a child's view of the world. It's like good wins over evil all the time, you know. So this little bit of anxiety when the wolf comes or whatever, it all turns out well in the end. It's in a safe environment in which they've experienced it, and that feeling no longer has a negative connotation. So when children, you know, go into play school or go in anywhere without you and they're showing that anxiety, if they have never experienced that little bit of anxiety within a safe environment, it's huge for them. And that's the children that, you know, really find it difficult to separate. So those, you know, experiencing feelings and emotions within a safe environment really equip children with the really important skills to be able to deal with difficult things that they will come across. So as practitioners, I'm nearly finished, guys. You'll be glad to hear. I feel this is quite long. So build a toolkit. This to me is hugely important. I have my own toolkit and I add to it. I've been with Lifestyle for 25 years and it has changed so much over the years, but it is hugely important. So build your own unique toolkit to support your performance, to protect and enhance your practice. A toolkit of supportive ideas and reminders will serve you well as a connected practitioner. We all have a practitioner manual here where we share ideas for each month of development and things that worked, things that didn't work, you know, little reminders of things that we need to remind parents of. And it's really useful. We call it the Bible, but it's technically called a resource manual. So having your own unique toolbox encourages you to see your role through the lens of evolving strengths-based practice and provides you with an invaluable resource to support parents and children, because we do a huge job and we cover so much. And if we have a resource pack or a toolkit that we can rely on to make our jobs even that little bit easier, it's, you know, it's really helpful. And it also helps consistency. So a really, really quick recap. Decline in empathy and resilience is linked to the changes in play experiences. Know what you see. Become that play detective. Movement is key. Fluency of body equals fluency of mind. Importance of cross-body coordination and dominance and the helper hand. Importance of reversible thinking and sequence. Remember, the creativity and imagination established in the right brain will serve as a strong foundation for language and numeracy in the left brain as it continues to develop past the age of 5. Reminders of the 3 R's: response, regulate, reason. And this I love. You wouldn't try to teach someone to swim when they're drowning. So that is kind of why we need to respond first, regulate second, and reason when they are ready. So we'll teach them to swim when they are not terrified. Remember flocking. Find the source of the behavior. The power of pair. Pause, empathize, acknowledge, reconnect. The importance of understanding the 8 senses. Connected, responsive parenting believes that when a child feels connected, they will thrive. And if we connect before we correct, we have growth and learning. But if we correct before we connect with our children, what do we have? We have forced obedience and stagnation, and normally no long-term solutions to behaviors because children are being forced to be obedient. That only opens up a whole new can of worms for the next stage of development, as we know. So finally, remember the vital part of your child's sensory system plays in their learning and their development. Remember inclusion, social and emotional growth. See a child differently to see a different child. Every child follows their own unique developmental path. Connected, responsive parenting support yields long-term positive results. Short-term fixes have no long-term impact. The impact of executive functioning on complex behavior. Remember the power of empathy over sympathy. When we label our children, they behave, they think, they feel, and then they become. Happiness is key, and to build your own toolkit as a practitioner to make everything a little bit easier for us, because as home visitors, I think we do a huge job, and I think we do it really, really well. So thank you everybody for listening. It was a bit of a long one, but we got there eventually. So I don't know if there's any questions or if you're all asleep.
Helga, do you want to take down your screen there and we'll see everyone?
Yeah.
There's some comments that have come through the chat, but no one has asked any questions yet. Now, having said that, Helga, it was absolutely fantastic and so informative. Really love the piece around risky play. It's something after my own heart, and especially it starts with those early books. I had just put in, just for anyone to know, that Owl Babies is a fantastic one for risky play. It's like the owls are sitting there and they're wondering, will the mother come back? She's gone to find food. And it's all about, and it's a really nice one to start with because it is quite dark and Mammy goes away and is she coming back? And they're all a bit worried. But it is so important that we gear our children with the skill set that they need, to combat that anxiety and, fear. And if it's done from a very early age with like small little chipping away at it, and books are a fantastic way of starting that. You're absolutely right around the
sure. There's some wonderful books out there.
I
had to stop. I don't have any young children. I've got to stop buying so many children's books, but there's so many good ones out there. Yeah.
I do that. I veer towards. I keep saying if I win the lottery, I'm going to open a children's bookstore. So
I'll go with you.
yeah. I keep veering still into them. Still walk into them on a regular basis. I'm just saying it's like there's a couple of ones in here. Great course, so much quality information. Thanks to all involved. Really helpful. So many helpful ideas. Using flocking to help the parents tune into
I love the flocking. The flocking is one of my favorite things.
People that have said that around the flocking. Would anybody like to come on if they have any questions?
Sorry, do you mind if I?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Alice. I'm with Community Families. I'm just wondering, Hilda, thank you so much. It's been so informative. I've been engrossed really. You mentioned the 8 senses and that interoception. Around the toileting. Can you expand a little bit on that? Because I've come across that.
Okay. So, often when we have in the past, we've been struggling, and the rewards they're not working. The charts are not working. We'll have hit and miss for a day or two. And then there's, we just return back to nappies. And this has happened 3 or 4 times, maybe with the same child over a short period of time. And it's just, their interoceptive sense we've discovered just hasn't fully developed yet. So their ability to tell when they're hungry, when they're tired, those things, they just don't have them. They haven't been able to read those internal signals. So when they need to go to the toilet, that signal of that urgency is not there. They haven't associated it with going to the toilet. So the best way to encourage your interoceptive sense development is to have a really rich sensory diet in all the other senses. So if you do lots of touch, impact, if you do lots of sensory input on vision, hearing, if we encourage our children to have loads of sensory input, we automatically awaken the ability to understand our interoceptive system. So it's not that we need to do work on the interoceptive system, it's that the other 7, having a rich sensory diet daily for the other 7 senses will automatically encourage your interoceptive sense to kick in. And we start then with real simple stuff of them being able to identify what the difference between being thirsty and being hungry and sleepy and, all of that. And once they start to be able to identify those wee signals in their bodies, then we reintroduce the toileting and get them to, pay attention to those signals of, the bladder or the bowel or the wee signs that they need to go. And it's just given us an answer to why is this not working? We've tried everything, we have tried everything this child understands, but no, their interoceptive sense just hasn't, it hasn't developed to the fullest. So what we do is we introduce a rich sensory diet in all the other 7 senses, and it will encourage the interoceptive sense to develop further.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay, Alice.
Great, Helga. Thank you, Helga. That's brilliant. I love that one, the sensory diet. It's really good, actually. It sort of puts it into what we really should be thinking about. Yeah. Yvonne has asked, what strategies would you use when a child is in the flocking stage?
So absolutely, once a child flocks to you, you give them what they need. Absolutely. Their needs come before yours at that stage. And if you can, if you give them exactly what they need at that, normally I see it mostly within, say, parent and toddlers, mother and toddler groups, where mum, hasn't just spent that extra couple of minutes that child needs. And it ends up that she then has spent her whole hour attending to the flocking or a few behaviors that have kind of escalated. So if you give a child what they want, if they want to sit up in your knee for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it happens to be until they feel, okay, I'm comfortable now in this environment and I think I can get down on my own and move off, you often get the rest of your time in your session to be able to relax and engage with other parents. But if we don't give it initially, we'll spend the whole session trying to work out what's wrong, when all we needed to do was fill that unmet need that the child had initially. So identify the need, fill it, and then move on.
Great. Thanks so much, Helga. Is there anyone else with any comments or questions before we wrap up?
This is great.
Yeah. And Helga, it's a testament to actually the quality of that presentation.
It's a testament that nobody wants to hear my voice for much longer.
We're done now. So I would look, thanks so much, Helga. It's
You're all very welcome. It was a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure as per usual. I would say that thanks so much to everybody for coming on. When you click off your Zoom link, a quick survey will pop up if you don't mind filling it in. It will give Helga an idea of the session and, where you are going with this, as in, is it working for you and stuff like that. But it also gives us a report then for the funders. And I will be sending out a survey in the middle of June to see what further training you want come September. We'll leave you alone for the summer to have your well-deserved annual leave and anything else that comes your way. Thanks very much again to everyone that took the time, and I will also send out all of the links to you by the end of this week as well. I'll just wait until they download and then I can put them up on the Home Visit Alliance website. Is that okay?
Brilliant.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Everyone. Helga, thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Helga, thanks very much. Everything is going through on the finance end of things, but I'll be in touch with you in September, no doubt.
Yeah, that's okay. If you just contact Mary directly, and then
I will.
Yeah,
I will, no problem. Helga, thanks, and I'll send out all those links.
You're so welcome. All right, thanks a million. Take care, guys. Bye. Enjoy the rest of your week. All right, bye. Bye.